What is up, guys? It's Coach Mark here. I had a couple of questions on the police fitness training program, my online training program for the fitness tests for law enforcement. So I figured I would answer those in a video so I can give you an explanation that makes kind of cohesive sense and touch on a couple different topics as I do it. So one of the questions was they're confused about the bird dog exercise. So if you know what the bird dog exercise is, it's also called a quadruped. That's when you're on all fours and you stick out one arm. Sometimes you'll stick out the opposite or that contralateral leg at the same time. And the question was, I don't feel anything while I'm doing this, which is a great question, and it's very common when doing the bird dog or the quadruped. So in order to do it properly, or at least the way that I have it designed in my program, is that you need to be able to develop tension throughout your core while keeping your extremity relaxed, so your shoulder and your hip. The entire goal is that the core doesn't move or the trunk doesn't move, so we're going to consider everything from kind of chest down or collarbone down to your hips to be your core. Your head doesn't move either, but for the sake of this conversation, we're talking about this portion. So what I want to have happen is I stabilize, I brace, okay? Now from here, can I move my arm independently without using my ribs and my low back to move at the same time? If I stay nice and stiff while I keep my arm moving, I can definitely start to feel the core, maybe the back, but ideally we want more kind of the front and the sides of the abdomen to feel it, as opposed to just, okay, I'm just going through the motion. It's all about creating tension. Now, there's a couple of ways to do the bird dog as far as as prescription. The method that I prefer is an 80% max of 10-second hold. So I'm going to create tension. Usually I make a fist. I press all the way out. So if I'm on all fours, I'm pressing towards the wall in front of me. My heel can push towards the wall behind me if you're doing the full version. From here, I'm staying nice and stiff, holding that position for 10 seconds. I relax, I come back, maybe I touch my knee, and then I come back out. I'm going to repeat that set until I've hit 80% of my perceived max. If you want to just do 10 seconds per side and call it a day, that's totally fine. It just depends on the goal of the exercise. The method I just described is going to focus more on core endurance versus if you do it only a couple times in your warm-up, that's going to focus more on what we kind of consider core activation. So getting the core musculature to be a little bit more excitable, so it gets it firing is one way to call it, so that when I go to do, say, my back squat or my lunge, everything here is already primed in the function that I want it to function. So I don't want my back doing this motion while I'm squatting. I want to keep it fairly stiff and create that motion through my hips. Same thing with bench press or military press or what have you. So that's topic number one. Topic number two was about the strength sessions. And one of the main comments was, this is a little longer than I'm used to in the strength session. My rebuttal to that is generally, then you're probably resting too long. So it depends on what kind of strength session it is. If we're going for true strength, like trying to be as strong as possible, and we're doing strength-based sets as opposed to hypertrophy or power, there probably is a little longer rest than you're used to. Now, when I say the word rest, I don't necessarily mean complete rest. I mean time between sets of your primary movement. So I'll give you an example. So the way that I set up most of my programs is you have set A, set B, set C. So it'd be A1, A2, A3. You rotate through those three. Sometimes you can call that a superset. Once you're done so many sets of A, you move on to B. The first movement is your primary movement. So let's say we call this one let's call it a pull-up. So A1 is a pull-up, and then A2 and A3 are going to be some sort of accessory movement. So it could be something that complements the pull-up. So for pull-up, maybe we're now doing a bicep curl to also hit the biceps along with the lats, or maybe we're doing something that's totally different. Maybe we're throwing lunges in there. For the sake of this argument, it's not really relevant. So the time between A1 and it circles back to A1 will be a fair amount of time, but there shouldn't be a very considerable amount of time between A1, A2, and A3. So what happens very commonly is you see people in the gym. I don't mean to point fingers, but they're on their phone. They're not getting in there and getting the work done. So if you're keeping the interval between A1 and A2 and A2 and A3, and then you come back to A1, if you're keeping that fairly tight, that will shorten up your training day considerably. If you're lounging around for a minute or two between exercises, yes, it's going to start to add up for sure, because I've put quite a few exercises in my programs. And the reason is you need to be efficient with your time. Now, the other thing to consider is it doesn't always have to be 5 sets. Most of my sessions, I'm currently doing about 3 sets per exercise, because I find that I can get enough stimulus that I see changes in my physique. I feel better at the end of the day, and I'm also not training for something that's super, super heavy. I'm training to get stronger, sure, but that comes about the effort within the set, not necessarily always more sets. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing that was mentioned along with the strength sessions are, I feel pretty good in the strength sessions, but I'm not hitting chest nearly as much as I feel like I should. Part of this is because of common myth that the bodybuilding sessions and programs are all focused upon the chest and the pec muscles. In reality, if you're training for police fitness, this big muscle, the pec muscle that helps us with our pressing, is not the most important muscle. Is it a show muscle? Yeah, it looks good. Bodybuilders look good with big pecs. What we're more focused on is functional movement patterns. So instead of focusing on the muscle, I'm focusing on the pressing motion. So as long as I'm getting stronger in the pressing motion in a couple different planes, so this would be in front of me, and then we have up top as well, and dips would be down below, which we don't focus on as often. As long as I'm getting stronger in that movement pattern, I'm happy. And that doesn't only come from the chest. That comes from shoulder stabilization. That comes a large part from the triceps, and then your ability to generate what we call like external torque throughout with a couple of the muscles that help stabilize the shoulder. So there's nothing inherently wrong with adding in some more chest movements. If you want to add in some more flies or incline bench press in a couple different planes, that's totally fine. But it isn't necessary to pass the police physical test, depending on which test you are doing. Generally, today I'm talking about the POPAT and the PAIR. But as a general rule, it doesn't really matter which test it is. Even if you have push-ups as part of your test, the pressing motion is more important than the pec muscles themselves. The last question was about intensity, and we're talking about Tabata. So I'll give you a reminder of what Tabata is. Tabata is a working to rest ratio of 20 seconds to 10 seconds, usually somewhere between 6 and 8 sets. So I usually start my clients off depending on their skill level at 6 sets, but I'll go down to 4 and start as high as 8 depending on where your training experience is. And the question was, I start off really good. I can keep my heart rate up in kind of that 180 zone, but after I get to set 6, I can't maintain that intensity any longer. Now, there's a couple ways to think about this. One, it's not all about keeping your heart rate up. That is part of it for sure, but it's not the primary goal. The primary goal is to get the stimulus of high intensity training and then a short amount of recovery to, again, come back to high intensity interval. There's a couple of reasons you might not be able to maintain the heart rate. One, you might just not be fit enough yet. That's totally understandable. 8 sets of something like an Airdyne bike, I routinely throw up if I'm really going hard at it, and I can't maintain my intensity after 6 sets either if I'm truly going hard for the first 6 sets. The other is body composition and your natural skills. If you're someone who we'd consider very alactic or glycolytic energy system, you're going to use up a lot of your energy, a lot of your natural energy in the first four sets, versus someone who's very aerobically based and their intensity is not as high throughout and they can't quite get to that max intensity, but they're really good at recovering in between sets. Then the question becomes, should I do 6 sets or should I do 8 sets? And I think there's a balance here. One, there's a balance of just getting used to being miserable, which is a huge component of fitness. Like they say, it doesn't get easier, but you definitely get better at it. You get better at living in the misery, so to speak. But I don't know that there's necessarily that much benefit to pushing through as far as just your endurance level. If your intensity is dropping down to, if you can't get above 150 beats per minute, you're probably done for the day. You've probably used up your gas tank. So that is something to keep in mind there. If you can't keep it up for 2 consecutive sets, that's generally where I recommend that people tend to cut it off. Regardless, make sure you do a good cool down for that one, because you don't want to just walk out of the gym with your heart rate up there. Walk around a little bit and let yourself calm down before you call it for the day. So hopefully that helps all of y'all who are applicants for the police test. If you ever have any questions, you can either phone me, text me, 971-270-6295, email me, mark@leofitness.ca, or join me on LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever. I'm more than happy to help. If you are ready to start your training, go to leo.fitness/products and get ready for your police fitness test. Hit me up if you have any questions. Cheers.